Good afternoon. Welcome back to the B&H event space. It is still Save Your Photos month. Allison Freedman back. We didn't scare her away. Back on the event space. Today we're going to talk about organizing your travel adventures with Mylio Photos. Allison, welcome back.
Thank you. Thanks for having me back. I didn't scare you
Always.
away either, apparently.
No, hey, we love it. You're welcome back as much as you want, even after Save Your Photos month. It's like, yeah, we're doing this big push Save Your Photos month, but this is stuff that we need year round, day to day. I'll give my speech that I always do when I have you guys on. I need to pay attention. I got to do better organizing. Along with the crowds out here, I need the help. So, Allison, I'm going to turn it over to you. I'll remind all of our viewers if you do have any questions, feel free to drop them into the YouTube chat, and I will see you in a bit for the Q&A.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. I am going to share my screen, hopefully, without any issues. And if someone can confirm that you're seeing my title screen, I'd appreciate
Yep,
it.
looks good.
Okay. Yeah, so thank you for having me back. This is my second or third time here presenting with B&H and as part of Save Your Photos Month. And so I'm very happy to be here. And a little bit about me before we dive into organizing your travel photos. I am a certified professional photo organizer. My company is Arrange Wander Focus based out of Chicago, Illinois, but I have clients all over the country. I have clients actually all over the world. I work both in person and remote, helping people preserve their memories and gain control over the mass of media that we take every day. So, what does the certified part mean? It means that I have been trained on best practices, both in the actual organizing and preserving, digitizing, removing duplicates, preserving, backing up, all the things we need to be doing with our photos, and also the ethics of working with other people's personal lives, essentially. So with that, I am also a privacy advocate. I co-taught a course for our organization on how to keep you and your photos safe online. I am also an amateur nature photographer, semi-dedicated birder, meaning that I go out when I can, and I wish I could get out more, and a travel enthusiast. And these last three are why I personally have so many photos and why I started my business. I love working with photos. I love helping other people work with photos. And travel photos, probably my favorites. So I am excited to be here today to help you, I hope, work through your travel photos so that you can share and enjoy them instead of just being worried about how many you have. So why why organize your travel photos? We're going to start a little bit with the end goal here. When your travel photos are organized, it makes sharing them easier. It makes photo projects easier. I saw a stat recently that something like 80% of people who attempt to make a photo book leave it in the cart in whatever website they're using to build it and never finish it. So I'm hoping that with some of my tips, you'll actually have organized photos to make those projects easier and make it far more likely for you to both start and finish photo book projects with your travel photos. When you are organized, you also will save space either on your hard drives, if that's where you're storing photos, or in your cloud storage. And for many people, unorganized photos can lead to anxiety. I have a lot of clients who come to me, and as soon as they drop their photos off, the biggest thing they feel is relief because something is being done with the thousands of photos from their phones and their memory cards and all their websites and wherever it is that they are storing them. So this may seem obvious, the benefits of organizing your travel photos, but I believe it's really important to know why you are doing something before you start doing it, because otherwise you may never finish. So what might an organized travel collection look like? And this is a little bit of a peek into mine. This is the end game. All of my travel photos are organized by large geographic areas and then broken down into smaller geographical areas, because this is how I think. There are obviously many different ways to do this. But the end game is really to have a place where you can go to find your travel photos from any particular vacation or trip and have them fully accessible, easy, enjoyable, shareable, all of those things. So this is what mine looks like, and I'm hoping that I can help you get part way or maybe all the way there today with some of the tips that I will share. So why are we focusing on travel photos? Well, travel photos are my favorite, so that's why I wanted to talk about them. But also, people tend to take a lot more photos when they're on vacation than they do on a regular day. And they're much more likely to want to share them in batches. So I did a brief unscientific survey of my network over the last few days, and I simply asked, how many vacation photos did you take on your last trip or a more recent trip? And you can see from these numbers, they were all over the map. So one of my friends just took 130 on a 16-day trip to Venice and Croatia. And I kind of laughed at that one because I could easily take 130 in a day in Venice and probably more. Um, but that's on the lighter end. I've got, over 1,000 for a weekend friends trip to Charleston, 2,400 with 3 different cameras in Alaska for 14 days, over 3,000 out on a trip out west for 13 days. So it's all over the map. But a lot of photos are taken on vacation. So how many is too many? Well, it depends. There is no right number. So if you fall on the light end, you took 5 pictures on your last vacation, that's fine. If you took 5,000, that's also fine. It really depends on how you interact with your photos and what you want to do with them. So a few questions to think about. If culling and organizing your photos gives you anxiety, maybe you're taking too many. If it brings you joy, like it does for me, maybe you have the right number, or maybe you don't have quite enough. And then think about, what do you do with your photos later? Obviously, you're taking them in the moment, you're enjoying what you're doing, but what happens in 6 months, a year, 10 years? Where are those photos? Do you ever look at them again? And which of those photos do you actually look at? So for me, when I thought about my own numbers and I went back and checked a little bit, I went on a 2-week safari a couple of years ago, and I have about 6,000 photos from that trip. And I love all of them. I just find I can't get rid of a photo of a lion in a tree. I have to keep it. But last week I was in Seattle with family for 5 days, and I think I took about 15. And the majority of those were of my brother's baby kitten. So that's about it for 5 days in Seattle. So it's really all over the map, depending on what you like and your habits. But it's important to think about what you are taking, because that's actually the first step to organizing the photos that you do take. So as I said, there's no right or wrong answer. And I want you to think about, I have this exercise here. I don't really want you to do it now because then you'll miss the rest of my talk. But I have these 2 exercises in the presentation. I have a few more with some other resources that will be available at the end. But think about and take a look at the photos you took from a vacation a year or two ago, and which ones of those photos, when you go back and look at the collection, assuming you can find them, which ones actually make you smile? Which ones do you linger over? Which ones do you think, wow, that was really fun? And which ones do you skip? And knowing that will actually help you take better photos on your next vacation. So, for example, if you're looking back and the photos that you are really enjoying going back to are the photos of, your kids, your spouse, your partner, your friends, and then you skip over the 20 photos you took of scenery. Maybe take fewer photos of scenery right to begin with. Take 2 photos of the Grand Canyon instead of 20 and focus on the people photos, maybe people in front of the Grand Canyon. And, the fewer photos you take or the more photos that you take that you actually enjoy will make the organizing process easier. So that is tip number 1. Where do our travel photos come from? Well, for most people nowadays, well, maybe not for this audience actually, but most people, it's just their phone. Then a lot of people add a digital camera. I know that's actually, I've always used a digital camera as well. I think it's actually becoming more popular now, or it's coming back. I think it had disappeared for a bit with the rise of the phone. Now it's starting to come back. Some people also have GoPros, and those are just the photos that you're taking. Then you have to think about the other people that are with you, your family members, friends, their cameras and phones. If you take a tour or have a guide, they will often give you photos as well. And then there's photos you can purchase. I see a lot of photos from Disney rides and around parks and things, which people have purchased and add to their collection. Then you may also have some additional photos or documents, things like itineraries. I always save my travel itinerary right with my photos. You might have ideas or pictures, screenshots of websites of things you've taken beforehand, tickets, all of that may end up in your travel photo gallery. So this is a lot of inputs, a lot of stuff. So tip number 2, I didn't actually number these, so I'll probably lose track at some point. But before you leave for your trip, the number 1 thing I can tell you is make sure you have enough storage. If you are cloud-based, say you're using Apple Photos or Google, double check online what storage you have before you go, because if you run out, you may or may not know that your photos are not getting backed up to the cloud. If you've run out of storage, they won't be syncing up there. You lose your phone and your photos are gone. So double check your cloud storage if that's what you're using. If you are using Mylio, which I am going to talk about next, or another hard drive based solution, make sure your SD cards are big enough. Make sure your computer or your iPad or whatever you're bringing with you, your phone itself, has enough room. Because to me, there aren't too many things worse. Well, okay, there's a lot of things worse, but in the travel photo world, there's not much worse than losing your photos or, thinking that they're backed up when they're not. So check your storage. Now, I organize all of my photos in a program called Mylio Photos, which you may or may not have heard of, and it has some very unique features. So I have a short, it's about a 5-minute video explaining and showing you my own library of what Mylio Photos is. I did this in part to save my voice, but also it's just an easy look in there so that you can see when I start talking about folders and albums, what I am talking about. So I'm going to play that, and then we will get into the organizing part. So here is Mylio Photos. I'm going to give you a brief introduction to Mylio Photos, which is a photo organization software. It has some features that are quite similar to others you may be more familiar with, Google Photos, Apple Photos, Amazon Photos, and others, but there are some features that are quite different, which is why I use it for my own photos and why I like it so much. So just to give you a quick look, this is their calendar view, one of my favorites because you can scroll through. Right now it's in the year view. You can scroll through and get a real nice picture of what you are doing at any particular year. You can see these events here with the dots. If I click on one of them, I clicked on Ecuador and the Galapagos, I can go in here and it will show me all of the photos that I took on that trip, which was a lot. If you go to the Galapagos, you have to take a lot of photos, but they're all here. I can then back out and drill into 2023. I can now see a snapshot of what was happening by month. If I go in further, here's August. I can see what was happening by day and get a nice quick view with the dates listed, which is actually something that I really like. I can then click into a day. This is August 5th, 2023, and see all of the pictures that I took on that day. This particular day was the Beach to Beacon race in Maine, which I had always wanted to do and finally was able to do it. And this particular picture, if I open up the information here, I can see the date it was taken. I can see the camera. I have a caption that I've added. This is actually Joan Benoit Samuelson, who I believe I identified with facial recognition down here. She's one of my idols. Went to my college, won the Boston Marathon, won the Olympic Marathon as well. I can add keywords, all of these kind of things. I can see where it was taken and the information there. All of this can be added to any photo. Some of it is automatically filled in. For example, if you have the GPS on your phone, it will automatically fill that in. And some of it is added. So if I back out again, that is the calendar view. But one of the things that really sets Mylio apart is that photos are actually organized into folders. So unlike most photo organization software, where you really have no idea what's going on underneath the hood, Apple Photos, Amazon, Google, you don't really know where your photos are stored, and you cannot access them outside of the software, at least not easily. Mylio actually stores all of your photos in folders, and you can see this exact same folder structure in Finder or Explorer. So if I right click, I have most of my photos organized in year month folders. So if we look in here, you'll see there is a year for just about everything that I have. And if I click on one of the years, you will see folders. These indicates folders for each of the months. Not only can I see that within Mylio, but if I want to, I can see it outside of Mylio. These are two of the drives that hold my photos. So if I click on one of them, slide this over, you will see the exact same folder structure. This is just in Finder. Explorer would look the same folder structure as you can see from within Mylio. So if for any reason I needed to go outside of Mylio and find these photos, here they are, which is very, very unusual, and it allows for future-proofing your photos. So if you ever decide not to use Mylio anymore, or you just need some other reason where you would want to access your photos outside, you can. It's not a black box. You know exactly where they are. Mylio does sync with phones and tablets and computers. They can be a mix of Android, iPhone, Windows, and Mac. It doesn't matter. It works on all of them. Your photos are all stored on your own hard drive or external drives, because a lot of computers don't have enough space. Or, notice the and the or, you can use the cloud. It is cloud independent, meaning you don't need to use the cloud if you don't like it. But if you want to, you can. Mylio is fully accessible offline. So I do a lot of photo editing and organizing on airplanes when I'm coming back from trips. So that is another unique feature. That is a quick overview of Mylio Photos. It obviously has a lot more features that I have not shown you here. Example is a map view. It has album views, and it has editing ability If you want to learn more, I do have other webinars out on YouTube you can search for, and the Mylio website and YouTube channel also has a whole host of information to help you. Okay. Oops, excuse me. Okay, so that is what Mylio is. And the reason I showed you that is because of the folder system. The folder system is how I organize all of my photos, and it gives me a unique way of doing it on the road. So going now into the travel photos and how we're going to wrangle them into submission. Before you leave for your trip, after you have checked your storage, create a place for your photos to go while you're traveling. Now, if you're using Apple Photos, Google, or one of the others, create an album so you can put them in there. But if you're using Mylio, what I do is I create a folder called Away. And the only things that will go in this folder, it's a temporary folder, whoops, are my trips. So it is temporary. I put everything in there while I'm traveling. And then after I've processed, deleted, and gone through the tips I'll share next, I move them into those chronological folders that I showed you at the beginning or in the video, and create albums as well. The reason I put them in this temporary folder is because Mylio allows you to change what versions of your photos are stored where. On your phone, on my phone anyway, I don't have a lot of space, so I don't keep original size photos on my phone. My phone is mostly thumbnails or optimized versions, just like, Apple and all of the others. But my computer hard drives have originals. And when I travel, I usually travel with my iPad, and I want that to store the originals so that I have a place for backup. So I create this away folder, and in that folder, I'll create temporary folders for my trips. So this one is probably hard to read, but in September, I was in Albania for a couple weeks. All of my photos went in there. I've mostly cleaned that out now, but I left it up here for you to see. And my next trip will be South Africa. I already created the folder in part because I was doing this presentation. But in there right now, that's where all of the photos will go. Right now, it only has my itinerary and a couple of websites that I found about where to go birding in Cape Town. I tend to go places without internet. So when I find a resource that I might want to use, I will actually print it to PDF and put it in Mylio so that I have it available. Mylio can read PDFs and most different file types. So that is super handy. If you're not using Mylio, again, make albums, works a little bit differently, but that's what I would do. And then what I do is I set the permissions on the whole away folder to store the originals. So like I said, travel with my iPad. On my iPad, these two folders here will hold original photos. They won't slough them off to the cloud and leave me with thumbnails only. And again, I do that because often I don't have internet, or if I'm going to be looking at them on an airplane, it doesn't do me a whole lot of good if they're in the cloud and I can't access them. So I set this folder to store the originals on my iPad. So the mechanics, I'm just going to do this kind of quickly. I usually travel with a phone like most people do. The phone photos are automatically imported straight into Mylio. I don't need to do anything other than open the Mylio program. Everything will go in. With my camera, and if I have a GoPro with me, which doesn't happen often, but on occasion, those both have SD cards. So I need to pull out the SD card, obviously, and import those into my library on my iPad. So I have two different scenarios here. In both cases, the photos are going into that away folder for that trip. But when I was in the Galapagos, I had an older iPad. I think it was 2018 with no storage and no Wi-Fi for a week. So I use this little adapter here, which you can get pretty much on Amazon or wherever, and it just had an SD card slot and a slot for a thumb drive. And I actually set on here, because my iPad had no space, I put the away drive, the away folder actually on this thumb drive, but Mylio can read it when it's plugged in. So each day or night or when I had time, I would copy the photos from the SD card onto the thumb drive and then view them in Mylio. On my last trip, I had upgraded my iPad, so it was a little bit easier, different adapter, but same idea. I just plug the SD card into the adapter and I import these photos directly into my iPad in that away folder. So now any photos from my cameras, I now have two copies while I'm traveling. I have the original on the SD card, which I then pop back into my camera, and I have the original either on my iPad or in this case on the thumb drive, so that I have two copies of everything, even when I'm traveling. With the photos on my iPhone, when I have internet, my iPhone will sync automatically with my iPad. So I will have the photos on both devices. In the Galapagos, they just stayed separate until I was at a place where I had internet, and then they would combine. But I could actually work on the photos either on my phone or on my iPad. It did not matter. When I was able to sync, all that information was combined. So that was the mechanics. And now let's get into the fun organizing part. Once you have all of your photos on the device where you're going to be organizing, so in this case, I did it for the most part on my iPad, the first two steps are the most important. And these are things that I would do either in the evenings or sometimes at breakfast, or if we had a siesta, or, a day when we were driving or flying or traveling or on a boat going somewhere and I had some time, I would try and do these first two steps. And if you do nothing else with your travel photos, if you can do these two things before you get home or on your way home, you will be 90% there in organizing your photos. Trust me on that one. So the first step is delete. I am a big deleter. I take too many photos, but I do delete a lot of them. So I tend to go through and look for fuzzy photos, mistake photos, somebody's foot, duplicate photos, why did I take that photo? I have no idea. And I tend to mark them instead of delete them right away. I just reject them. It's similar to Lightroom. If you've used that, you can just press X and set it to be rejected, and then later filter for rejected photos and delete them all at once. And I actually do that in part because if I deleted them all at the beginning, next time I plug in that SD card, they're all going to get re-imported because Mylio won't see that they're already there. So I reject them. Mylio sees that I've already imported these photos and won't re-import them. So that's the way I do it. But look for those photos. There are, I guarantee you, a good percentage of photos you can delete right away because you're not sure why you took them, or you took too many. Here's an example. This donkey was really cute coming up on the guide here. I think I had like 10 of these photos, but I did not need them all. I kept one. That's all I needed. So the other two would be marked for deletion. Here's another example. When I take photos of birds or wildlife, I shoot on burst mode with my camera, which gives me a lot of extra photos. So for these, I look through the sequence quickly. I pick one that looks good and I mark all the rest to be deleted because I just don't need them. The other area where you can do this is with group photos. You hand somebody your phone, they take 10 pictures of your group. You really only need one or two of those. So you can go in and delete the rest. I think the exception might be if there's kids. You have to look a little bit more closely at that, but you don't need them all. And this brings us actually to step 2, which is favoriting your favorites. So, for example, with your group photos, somebody takes 10 photos of your group, look through them and favorite the one or two, the one that you're going to send home or the one you're going to send to your friends somewhere else, maybe while you're still traveling, and delete the rest. Because I can almost guarantee you that 6 months from now, when you sit down and you see those 10 photos, you'll go right through them all again looking for that best one. If you had just favorited it at the time and deleted the rest, then you'd already be there. So it saves you time in the end. So I go through in Mylio, I use a purple flag that doesn't have a little heart button. So I use a purple flag for all of my favorites. And this is a view of a filtered view of some of my favorites. On Apple and some others, you can use a little heart. It's the same process. Just mark them in some way so that you know right away and you can get rid of a lot of junk right at the beginning. So, as a little exercise, think about, and again, do this maybe when the webinar is over, but take a look at the last group of people photos that you took. And did you share any of those? And which ones did you share? And then have you ever needed the rest of them? Most people, not everybody, there's always exceptions, but for most people, they gravitate back to one or two. It's the same photos every time, and they never do anything with the rest of them. So why are they cluttering up your library? Just get rid of them. And then when you're on your next vacation, think about that and either do it right away or remember, you know what? I really didn't need to click that button 10 times. They all look exactly the same. So just delete a few of those. These will be repeated in the resource I have for you at the end, along with a few other little exercises that you can do. So you can take a snapshot, but you can get it at the end from me. So step 1 and 2, like I said, this will get you probably 90% of the way to cleaning out those travel photos. But if you have the time and inclination, if you remember at the beginning, if you are one of the people that enjoys culling and cleaning and organizing your photos, we have some additional steps. If cleaning and culling your photos gives you anxiety, stick with these two, and I promise you, you'll still be happier. But I'm going to go through and give you some additional tips that you can use. So one of my favorite things is to add captions to my photos. I like to put the story in. Not every photo, maybe 10% of my photos, 15% may have captions, but I do love it when I do it. And one of the things that I learned is typing on that phone if I'm using it, or sometimes the iPad. I just don't feel like typing that much, but you can use speech to text. So I have a little example here. You can do this on iPhones and Androids and other devices.
Waiting out the storm in Montenegro, period. It rained several inches in the space of half an hour, period.
That's not the most exciting caption, but it actually was a very funny story. I didn't feel like putting in the whole thing, but you can see all I had to do was click the little button, talk to my phone, and it actually did a really good job. It's remarkably good, both on iPhones and on Android. I also use this tip when I'm working with older people who have trouble typing, or if I just want to gather stories, I will just show them the photo, click this little microphone button, and have them speak right onto the photo, and then it will stick with the photo. So very, very handy for captions. I also tend to use keywords. Now, Mylio and most photo organization software treats captions and keywords similarly in terms of searching. I tend to think of captions as the story and keywords as the quick hit. So I don't take a lot of food photos, but I do take a few, and usually sometimes I want to find all of those together, but they don't really need a full caption. So I add a keyword food. And this particular picture actually did not show up in an AI search on 2 different platforms that I tried it on. So the keyword makes that super helpful. Sometimes people use buildings like churches or types of places. I have an X-ray keyword, as I have accident-prone boys. Sports, some AI will find that automatically if it's a sport like soccer or you're at a football game or something like that, a sailing regatta on vacation, but it won't find others. My older son was a fencer. If you type in fencing, you get picket fences around houses. You do not get kids with swords. The other one I use a lot is signs. We have a tendency to collect funny signs that we see around the world. So I mark those too, just to make them easily searchable. So those I will add as I am going through my photos. And then one other tip along the lines of the captions and the keywords. I used to be really good about keeping travel journals. I would do this every trip. At night, we would sit down and I'd ask the kids questions, I'd write down their answers. As everybody got older and they lost patience with me, this didn't happen nearly as often. So now I do it in my photos themselves. I will pick one or two photos from a day. I will put a longer caption on the photo with whatever the story was of the day. And then I'll add a keyword called journal. Then when I'm home later on, I can just search for journal. It'll pull up, a handful of photos, one or two or three photos per day. And I can flip through each one. And that is my journal from my trip. It works for me. It's a little bit easier. If you really wanted to, you could then, copy those into a document of some kind. But this is good enough for me because my photos are usually where I go when I need to know something about a place that I was in. So that's why I now just use a journal keyword. Another thing that you can do while going through your photos is most or all phones now have GPS built in. You can decide whether or not to turn that on or off. Some people keep it off for privacy reasons. I always turn it on when I travel because I'm a little bit obsessed with a map view, which Mylio has a great map view. I can click on any of these if this were live, and it will take me to the photos from that place. Google, Amazon, Apple all have that as well. But my camera does not have GPS. So what I do when I'm traveling, if I remember, I will take a photo with my phone in the same spot just to get the GPS coordinates. If I forget, then when I open up Mylio, I will either drop the photo onto the map within the program, or I will go to Google Photos Google Maps when I have internet and get the GPS coordinates. And so then I will either copy the coordinates from my phone or Google Maps and drop them right in here into Mylio, and it will populate the rest of the location for me and populate the map. Again, this is a little bit extra. This is why I'm a photo organizer, because I love to do these things. If any of this is making you think, oh my gosh, this is way too much, stick with delete and favorite. Trust me, that will get you very far. But all of the rest of this, I find fun, so I do it. And then once it's done, there is some great payoff. Once it's done, all of my photos are culled. Many of them have captions or keywords. I will then grab the best ones or a smaller portion anyway, because I take a lot of photos. And if I were to show these to somebody, I get home, my parents want to see, nobody wants to sit through thousands of photos. I will take the best ones and put them into those albums, like I showed you at the very beginning. Now, just as a reminder, there's a difference between folders and albums in Mylio. Folders are where the actual photos live. That's where you can go to Finder and Explorer and see them all there. Albums are essentially just virtual collections of photos. So you can make albums in Mylio, in Apple, Amazon, Google, pretty much all the software, Forever, SmugMug. And so I do that so that I have a smaller grouping of photos that I can then either just create an automatic slideshow within Mylio. I just press play and it will create a slideshow for me, or I will use them to then you create photo projects. So I make travel photo books for every one of my trips. And I usually just go right to that album and I will go right to the journal entry photos and use that to create my books. And so I am not one of those people who starts a book and never finishes it. I finish all of them relatively quickly because I've done so much of the work before I get home. I do it, like I said, if you do it in the evenings or when you have some kind of siesta, or for me, I'm a very early riser. The rest of my family is not. So I will sometimes do it then. And then I always do the delete and favorite that day or the next day. Sometimes the captions, keywords, GPS, that happens essentially when I'm on my way home, on the plane, on a long car ride, something like that. It will all get done so that by the time I get home, I can get this book done pretty quickly, because the hard work is done. The photos are already organized. You could also easily then have photos you've already identified to share. If you wanted to create a web album to share with people, just pick those, either sort for your favorites, or if you've made the album within your photo software, share that. Make a book, put them on a digital frame. This weird picture, I'm not really sure what's going on here. I just copied this from the Nixplay website because Nixplay has great digital frames. I put a bunch of travel photos on there. I have one in my office so that it's constantly playing all of my trips for the last like 20 years, I think. I also, with the book, it's usually the photos that I've favorited. But then I might take some of the others that are in that album and create a QR code to add to my book. And this will lead to an album or a slideshow that has the rest of the photos or more of the photos. So once they're organized, all this becomes quite easy to do and makes your life easier, makes my life easier. And I enjoy doing it. So one last tip, and then we'll go to some questions if there are some. At the very beginning, I mentioned some of those inputs, some of where your photos are coming from are from other people. So other family members, other people that are with you on the trip, your guide, maybe you purchase photos wherever. And often they get shared in galleries like a Google shared photo or a shared album in Apple or however you're doing it. But if a photo is important to you, somebody shares some photos with you that you really love, immediately save them to your own devices, your hard drive, wherever you are saving the rest of it. Why? Because in almost all photo software, if the person who shared the photos with you originally, 5 years down the road, 1 year down the road, whenever, decides that they don't want to have that gallery anymore, maybe they're cleaning out their own photos, maybe they accidentally deleted it, maybe they changed the permissions, maybe they've run out of storage. There's a whole host of reasons why these might be taken down. You will lose all access to it. So this, I have had people come to me many times, Google Photos, where did they all go? Well, they weren't yours to begin with. So if you didn't save them, they're gone. Another big example of this, not travel, but Shutterfly used to, a lot of sports teams used to put all their team photos on Shutterfly. I know my kids' soccer photos. I had years and years of soccer teams on Shutterfly. Well, at some point, whoever owned that account, they don't do that anymore. Their kids don't go to that school anymore, whatever. They go through and they delete it, and all of a sudden you've lost all access. This is right in all of the software's own support manuals. So here's just an example from Google, but this is the same with just about every software I can think of, where if you stop sharing an album, the other people that you had previously shared with will no longer see the photos. The photos will be removed from their accounts. And if the exception is, if they had downloaded or copied the photos that you had shared, turning off the sharing will not delete those copies. So just remember to do that. I actually will often, I take the most photos in my family. My kids take almost none. My husband doesn't bother because I'm doing it. But when they do take some good ones, I actually almost always have them airdrop them to me because AirDrop works without internet. Uh, and so I get the good photos, and iCloud Link also works really well for you to get the originals. Just make sure that you are gathering the originals that you want to save, add them to your own library, delete the ones that you don't want. Hopefully, they didn't share ones with you that you don't want in the first place, but if they did, delete them. And then go through the same process, favorite them, move them, etc., to wherever they are going to live. So those are my tips. I have here, if you scan this QR code, or this is the link at the bottom here, you'll receive an email that has additional exercises to help you identify areas where you can cut back on your photo taking and to make you really think about what types of photos you want to keep, which makes it easier when you're taking photos and when you're cleaning them out. I have a two-part blog on organizing travel photos, which talks about some of this and some additional things, plus some other blogs that I have that are helpful. I have also all the webinars that are helpful. And there's also a link in there if you are interested in Mylio Photos, just for listening to me and connecting with me. There is a link to try it for free or get 20% off a year's subscription. So that is all here. You can also use this link to respond to the email if you have questions later on or want to connect with me for another purpose. So that is what I have for you. Derek, are there questions?
Of course there are. Let's get it started. And for anyone who I've ever shared a Dropbox with, you can rest assured that it has been deleted. So I hope you saved those photos. Just throwing it out there. Elizabeth gets the question started with, if you add pictures from friends at a later date, will it recognize the date the pictures were taken by your friend or the date you received them?
It depends on how they are shared with you. So, for example, when I share, I'll use a couple different examples. When I share from Mylio, I have the option of stripping all the metadata or including all the metadata. If I include the metadata, the picture that you receive will have the proper date. If I strip it, it won't. If you are sharing photos via WhatsApp, which a lot of groups do, the date is almost always stripped off. So you will not get the date. And when you add it into your own library, it will just be the day that you received it. Apple, there's some settings, same with Google. So it's really dependent on the settings of the person who is sending it to you, which is why I actually like iCloud Link and AirDrop, because that actually will preserve those dates. But if you don't use Apple, that's not an option. So it's really talk to the people that you are sharing with and choose a way to do it where the date would be preserved.
Okay. And what's the circumstance, Allison, where you would not save the metadata?
If I was going to post it on social media,
Okay.
if it was going to use it in a presentation, which someone could pull off the web. There's a lot of reasons. With travel photos, less likely.
Okay.
Travel photos, usually I would leave all the metadata on, but there are other situations. For example, anything I need to share with school to submit photos or that I need to upload for some purpose where a lot of times with my kids, I don't want people knowing where I took that photo. I don't want them to know because I could do a whole other talk on it. Actually, we already did one with Heather Nickerson on what's in those photos, but I don't necessarily want people knowing the location of my house if I take a photo in my house. Travel, I really don't strip it. There's no real reason to strip it for travel, but other situations, I usually strip the data when
That's
I
some
share.
good information there. I didn't even think about some of the reasons you gave there. So that's why we
You should go back and listen to the webinar we did with Heather Nickerson on B&H event space.
As if I need any other reason to be more paranoid about everything. It's like now with AI, it's like we recognized the picture on the wall and broke it down. It's like everything, that used to be like CSI, like, no, that's just in the shows. Now it's like all coming to fruition. So
yeah, we're not even going with AI.
yeah.
And actually, that actually is a second point I should have mentioned actually. When I add captions and keywords I usually add to things that I don't think AI will find for me.
Oh,
So I
interesting.
don't add waterfall anymore
Okay.
because if you search waterfall on literally any photo organization software that has AI, so all the big ones plus Mylio, it'll find that for you. You don't need to add it. I used to.
Okay.
So I tend to use it for things that it might not find.
So that's pretty standard. Me being an iPhone person and not using photo organizational software, for the people who aren't using it and who are had just discovered that, wow, I can go into my iPhone camera roll and search, like you said, waterfall. Is that
Mhm.
pretty standard across most of the photo organization software?
It is. Well, it's not in everything. So Google, Amazon, and Apple, yes. And if you want to try a little trick, one of the fun ones for people who have never actually tried this, search for something like birthday cake, because that's a weird one that most people actually have those in their library, and Apple will find them, Google will find them, Amazon will find them. Others don't. SmugMug does not. Forever does not, although I believe it's coming. Um, I mean, there's a lot of different ones out there. Mylio has it, and some are better than others. But if you search dog or cat in most photo software, you might not find only pictures of your dog. You'll find all the dogs you've ever taken. But yeah, it's pretty standard.
Okay. Yeah, it's a lifesaver. I just did birthday cake, but
Did you have any?
I got all different kinds of cakes. Anything that is
Yeah,
cake is, yeah. So
yeah.
very, wow. It even pulled up a not that good picture of a birthday cake. Wow, pretty good.
There you go. So
Well,
here's another tip. So if you find yourself looking for birthday cakes for a particular purpose, and you've got that group and there's 20 of them, go through and favorite the one you are actually looking for so that next time you can find it faster.
wonderful
And
add-on tip.
consider deleting the rest if you don't need them.
While we're there, I'm gonna ask it. Um, I know doubles are kind of like okay, doubles is a no-brainer, but there
Yeah.
are certain situations where it's like not just with our photos, family photos, travel photos, similar but kind of different. Where do you draw a line? Do you go crazy with like, all right, I kind of have this is one of the moments, or do you save a little bit more than usual on like a travel or family trip?
So for me personally, now that my kids are older, I generally save one. So I hand my phone to somebody, invariably they take 10 photos. They all look the same. I pick the one that where most of us look the best, and I just keep that one and delete the rest. When my kids were little, I would keep one or two or three, depending, because their expressions were often different and never were the best ones in one photo. When I work on client photos, that's something we actually talk about at the very beginning, and I will usually keep two or three because what I think is the best photo may or may not be what they think is the best photo. So with people, it's real variable, but I do encourage you to really look at them and you get better at it over time. You really don't need 10. I mean, they are essentially all the same. People pick up that phone and they just click the button in rapid fire. So they're really all the same. I'm not talking about different poses and things.
Mhm.
Animals, I'm kind of the same when I do burst. If you're taking burst speed of a lion, they're actually all gonna be mostly the same there too. Burst speed on a bird, those take a little more care because they're moving more. But I have gotten better over the years at deleting most, picking the one, sometimes two, and deleting the rest because I've found when I look back at those photos a year, two, three, 10 years later, all I want to see is the one that I liked the best, and I don't want to plow through them again looking at the others. And I've actually gone back every once in a while when I've gone back looking for something for an older collection that I wasn't as good about cleaning out. I'll actually then start to clean out some when I'm there because I'm like, I don't need 20 photos of this lion in a tree. They literally are all the same. And it's hard. It's hard to do,
Mhm.
actually. You just pick the one, you get rid of the rest, and future you will thank you. Because next
Oh,
time you go
totally.
back, you're like, oh, there's that one. I don't have to spend 5 minutes.
And let's be real, future us is not going to sit there and be like, ah, I had 15 more of this that I deleted on every single instance of it. You're gonna go back and be like, oh, I'm so glad I have a picture from this day.
Exactly.
That's it.
Exactly. And people are the same way. I have found, um, when I go back and look at group people photos, and sometimes I've asked somebody, somebody sent me something once and I'm looking for it, and for whatever reason I didn't save it and I didn't save all my text. So I might ask them again, can you send me one of those pictures from, when we went to the play or whatever? They always send the same one. And that if you look at their phone, they have 10 of them, but every single time they send the same one. So every time they go looking, they spend 5 minutes looking for that one that they like the best, and they send that one, but the others still live in their phone. So think about all those 5 minutes that you could save if you just deleted them right at the beginning.
Yeah.
It
Here's
takes
looking at me.
practice. Yeah.
I need practice. Another question on printing. What do you use for printing your books?
Printing my books. It depends. Everything depends, right? My current favorite, I actually will print a lot from Milk Books. It is a company, it's a kind of an upscale company out of, I want to say New Zealand. It might not be. Don't quote me on that. I have some business to business printers. And then I also like, shoot, it's totally escaping me at the moment. There is a consumer company that's quite good that is completely escaping me, but hopefully I will remember it. And whoever asked that question, if you send me an email, I can answer it for you because it's completely out of my mind at the moment. Printique is also pretty good. That's a consumer facing one. I used to print my books from Shutterfly long ago. I don't like their quality so much anymore. I just like others better, and I find it easier to design in other software. So,
Great point. All right. Two final questions here, both on sharing images, but both a little bit different. How would you transfer an extensive catalog from ACDC Photo Studio to Mac, or I'm sorry, ACDC Photo Studio for Mac to Mylio?
that is a pretty specific question there. I have not used ACDC. So I don't know how the photos are stored in there, whether you need to export them or if you can just go into the back end and pull the folders. So depending, that obviously is a big part of it. Getting things into Mylio is quite easy. You simply point Mylio to the folders and there they go. And then Mylio will do all of the cataloging. It automatically creates that beautiful calendar for you. It doesn't matter how they're organized on the back end. So that one is a little bit more of a specific question than I can answer here in terms of how you get them out of ACDC, but getting them into Mylio is very easy. Like I said, phones sync automatically. So essentially you have like a phone folder, and then you can create whatever folders you want on the back end. If your photos are already organized in a way that makes sense to you, then I simply tell Mylio, go look at those folders, and you will just magically see all those folders in Mylio. You don't have to change it. Or you can bring them in, and then if they're completely disorganized, organize them from there.
Perfect. And one final question here on sharing images. I know we've talked quite a bit about that with some of the apps in various ways. Our viewer is asking best way to share images. I'm going to take that and kind of re-engineer it, because best way to share images is, again, it depends on the day. It depends on who you're sending it to, what you're sending. If we could kind of just break this down into two groups. A couple images, say you take a couple images. Hey, at the baseball game, you want to send it to the other parents, but the issue is always, okay, if everybody doesn't have an iPhone, and you have the whole iPhone to Android thing, and image loss, the loss of quality in images. So let's break it down into, okay, we're sending a couple images. We just want full quality images to go through and not pixelated images. And then on more of a professional, like, okay, we're sharing a folder or a group of 2,000 images with somebody. So if we could break it down into those two groups, what are the best ways that you recommend?
Okay, so the first one, it does really depend on the phones that you're using. If everybody's all Apple, all Android, I say just go ahead and text it. If it's a mixed group or you don't know, and it's just a few, do it by email, because that you can choose the quality, and you can choose to send the original, and then everybody will have it, assuming you have everybody's email, of course. That's what I would do there. I actually use AirDrop the most for sharing images.
So great.
But again, you have to be Apple. Now, for sharing large groups of images, it really depends on what software you use. I am a big fan of using what you have. So if you are an Apple person, you can actually, put them all together, pick out the photos you want to share, create an album within Apple Photos so they're all together, and then create an iCloud link. And that link can actually go to Apple or Android. You can open it on a computer. It doesn't matter. You can get those and download them. You can use Dropbox. You can use Mylio to create a gallery. Again, it would be a link that people would get, and then they just press a button that says download. You can use, I actually don't use Dropbox. I use a program called pCloud, which is somewhat similar. Again, it's I create the folder, I just send the link to the folder, and I set the permissions so that people can download. So really, it depends on the software you're already using, frankly. I'm not a huge fan of some of these other apps that allow you to have groups to share because I find that the privacy controls on those are terrible. I've tested several of them, which I'm not going to name here, but essentially I could add people that I want to share with, but then they could add whoever they wanted, and then I'd have no idea where the photos are going. So I much prefer something that gives me control over where they're going, either by requiring an email or, a link that nobody can guess. But it really depends on what you're already using. I don't want people to go out and buy Dropbox storage because Allison said you can share that way, if you're never going to use it for anything else, or pCloud or the others. So take a look at what you're already using and see. So for Apple, like I said, iCloud Link is one of my favorites. Google, you can share, just make sure that your permissions are set such so it's actually originals and that people can download from it. There's a lot of people misuse Google and then don't realize that their photos are not full original quality because they haven't checked their settings. So you just have to be careful. Again, that's another really big question that is probably good for another time because it can go in about a million different directions.
Definitely nuanced as
Yeah.
always. It's like I feel like half of the things you answered today, you
I
probably could
know.
have spun off into your own hour-long
I
conversation on them. It's
probably. It's why I have a business because people ask me these things all the time.
There you go. And we did
Yeah.
drop that information there. We had the QR code up. I hope you guys
Yeah.
all scan that and you can catch the replay. A lot of great information as always when you're on, Allison. So a huge thank you for your expertise in this line. And to all of our viewers out there, thank you guys for tuning in and engaging. It's always more beneficial when we get questions. And sometimes you get very detailed, but it's good because somebody might not have thought of something. You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
So that's why we do it. Huge thank you to Allison and the entire photo managers community out there for this wonderful month of content that we've been having every week. That is it. That's all we have for you today. Another edition of the Event Space is now in the books. Catch y'all next time.